Just like, good afternoon. Here we are. So I'm Carla Van La, and I am here in southeast Gippsland on Bunurong land at the moment. So I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging of this very beautiful place. So I was invited here today to speak with a group of art therapy students who are interested in having a chat about art-based research. Now, am I coming up as the speaker on your screens? Okay, because I can see somebody else, but that's okay. If you can see me, that's all fine. Yeah. Just to let you know, I sort of put together a few ideas, and I've called it sort of Inquiring the Arts, Therapies and Art-Based Research is our topic. And there's a few key take-home messages that I'll speak to. So number one, methods used in, well, somebody's coming in. Okay, methods used in scientific research have been shown to be lacking when it comes to understanding how art works. So if you're just joining, thanks. Second take-home message. Thanks. The second take-home message is this. It's really simple. Why do we do research? We do research to find out about things that we don't already know, or to find evidence for things that we think we know. So just again, I think I can mute people if they haven't muted themselves. Maybe I'll just do that. There we go. Done. And number three, there are many ways to include art in, about, for and through art-based practice. And finally, you can design research that reflects what you want to know about how you work, and also research that is congruent with your values. So these are really important points, especially, well, for any researcher, but especially for art therapists. Sometimes when you hear people talking about research, they're really talking about literature reviews, which is a form of research. And I think that might be the kind of research that you may have already been taught. And there's other times when you'll hear people talking about research and they'll sort of dismiss any research that isn't designed in a way that's in keeping with scientific research. So research, for example, that has a control group, okay, or things like that, or research that is replicable, or research that is quantifiable, okay? And so when these things happen, they can be very disconcerting for art therapists, because those methods are really out of keeping with the ways that we practice. They're out of keeping with the things that we want to find out, which are usually about how and about qualities of things. And they're out of keeping with our methods, because we use creative practices. And so research can sort of seem stressful, and also research can be a place where art therapists feel misunderstood and alienated at times. So what I'm hoping to do today is to sort of myth bust a little bit, and just paint maybe a different picture. So where will I start? I've made a map of things that I'd like to talk around, and I've got some things that I will show you. And then I thought I'd give you an example by looking through a couple of the chapters in my own research, and then have a bit of a discussion. So I'll just keep moving. So maybe we'll talk about types of research for a start. Somebody's written in the chat. Oh yes, thanks. You can mute all of us. Yeah, I finally figured that one out. So I'm going to share my screen here, I think, and I'm going to take you to Chrome. I have some stuff to show you. No, not Facebook. I didn't want to show you that. I wanted to show you this. Right. So this is a recent report that was put out by the WHO, the World Health Organization. And as you can see, it says, what is the evidence on the role of the arts in improving health and well-being? Then this is what they called a scoping review. So this is an example of research done about research that's been done about art. Okay, so this is in fact a literature review. It's a cumulative review of all of the evidence that they decided to include, which they describe here, how they decided. But it's a big scoping project, and I just wanted to show you what they chose. So this is the World Health Organization, and this is how they reviewed evidence to link arts and health. So if you can see this part here, it says the reviewed evidence included study designs such as uncontrolled pilot studies. Okay, so that's people just deciding to do something potentially experimental for the first time and studying it. Yeah, case studies, so that will be studies that look at working with one particular person or group, maybe over a particular time. Small scale cross-sectional surveys, nationally representative longitudinal cohort studies, community-wide ethnographies, and randomised controlled trials from diverse disciplines. The reason that I wanted to show you that is just to give you an example that even the World Health Organization is using a much broader range of evidence than just the randomised controlled trials that are frequently promoted, if you like, as the only way of providing evidence. So that's one thing that I wanted to show you. And just to talk about the different types of research, the ways that we can examine art and art-based processes. So some of those, I think you probably already know about the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. Yeah, so some of these, like the randomised controlled trials, will be looking at quantitative data, and others, like case studies, all right, will be looking at qualitative data. So they're more likely to collect stories and have interviews and things like that. But there's also the idea of art-based research that I wanted to introduce, and I will. But I wanted to show you another example of something before I do. So I'll just stop sharing for a moment. The thing that I mentioned before was how the sort of the limitations of scientific methods when it comes to studying the arts and art therapy. So it was a few years back that I was asked to actually do a piece of research, which was a literature review, okay, for the Footscray Community Arts Centre, and it was about creativity and ageing. And the reason they asked me to do this research was to help inform their practice. So they asked me to look at the evidence base for creativity and ageing. So what I wanted to show you was, well, I guess I wanted to say that literature reviews are valuable because they can help to inform practice, but they're always looking at secondary sources. This was interesting here because this is really important, this part. This is what I found about the research that was being done, okay? So this isn't about the findings. This is about how we're even conceiving of research and doing research. So this was over the past 30 years, and the development showed paradigm shifts in the way that research was being conducted. So it was away from pathologizing and towards holistic approaches. It was away from short-term and quantitative testing towards longitudinal engagement and mixed methods research. It was away from a focus on symptom reduction towards community and cultural development and intergenerational programs. And it was towards the economic benefits of health promotion strategies to keep our ageing population well and living independently for longer. So can you see the paradigm shift happening there? Yeah, yeah, okay. I think there was something else in there. Oh yeah, there is. There's another example that I just wanted to show you to help build the case, if you like. I'll just scroll down through it. No, goes into, there was good evidence to show all of these wonderful ways that creativity does support living independently. Now, this is the one I wanted to show you. So this particular piece of research that I looked at in this literature review is a pre-test, post-test experimental design with a control group. So that's, as we say here, a scientifically accepted methodology, and perhaps that's because the people who conducted it did have nursing backgrounds. So it included a sample of 57 participants, 28 of whom were assigned to a control group and 29 who were assigned to a treatment group. So the treatment group attended creative groups where they engaged in all sorts of creative activities. So both groups, the group went for 1 hour a week for 8 weeks. Both groups completed pre and post tests, okay, to collect data, including all sorts of things, including life satisfaction and purpose in life. The researchers hypothesised that participants in the creativity groups would show significant increases in creativity, However, when the data was analysed, there were no significant differences in the data between the groups. So rather than decide that the groups were of no value, the researchers actually had a look at the research design, okay? And what they said in their discussion was that the research design itself may not have enabled meaningful data collection. Okay, so they reported the creativity group participants enjoyed the groups, but the data, the way that they designed their research just didn't capture the benefits. Okay, so they recommended that longer-term engagement could be necessary to see data that reflects the benefits of participation. And they also, if you look here, considered that the instruments they selected may have been inappropriate for use with the participants. The participants experienced difficulty using the tests and possibly chose socially desirable answers. Okay, so what I've said here is that it's really important for us to consider user-friendly data collection strategies, longitudinal engagement, and these methods are more likely to reveal meaningful results when studying creativity and ageing, which is what this one was about. So I'll stop sharing that one now. Okay, so this sort of brings me to where I did want to get, which is about art-based research. So some researchers, so I'm expecting that you would have by now come across, of course, Heron and Reason and their expanded epistemology, including different ways of knowing. And so they do advocate for qualitative methods in research that include all the different ways of knowing, and they would include art making as part of a qualitative research paradigm. Okay, but there's also other researchers who argue that art-based research is actually a paradigm in itself, or even that it's post-paradigmatic. And what that means is that the idea that within art-based research that different perspectives can coexist, okay, without having to be in competition with each other, but they can coexist and co-inform each other. And it's that some people also argue that through art-based research that genuinely unique findings can emerge through that use of that paradigm. So I will let you know, I'm just going to share again here for a bit, and I'm going to go back to Chrome where I had another little tab somewhere. Is it this one? Yeah. Okay. So all I did was go to Google Scholar and put in art-based research. So you can see that it's a scholarly field and that there's plenty of work that been written about art-based research. So I thought I'd show you a couple of these that are highly recommended. So this one, Lynn Capitan, 2017, Introduction to Art Therapy Research. Okay, so if you look at Lynn's book, you'll find that she does introduce you to ways of researching in art therapy where you can use quantitative methods, where you can use qualitative methods, and also you can use art-based methods. So if you were to use all three of those at once, that's what we would call a mixed methods approach to research. So this is a really good book, okay, as an overview, and she's a great author. Where I was first introduced to art-based research was when I was studying my master's. You can see McNiff, 1998. So his book, Art-Based Research, was nothing short of an epiphany for me when I came across this. Art-based research. So lovely Sean McNiff introduces the idea that art can be our subject, so that the topic of our research, it can be the method through which we conduct our research, and it can also be the way that we present our findings. This was amazing, mind-blowing for me when I came across that book back then. And so I used art-based research myself in my master's in the year 2000, and I also used it in my doctoral research, which I completed in 2019. There's one more book here that I thought was worth showing to you, because this one isn't just about art-based research in the arts therapies. This is about art-based research in general. And so you'll find that in schools of fine art, that researchers will often be doing practice-led research where their art making is actually their inquiry. Yeah, and so this is a book that's really worthwhile reading as well. I will stop sharing. They're just a few. If you keep looking, you'll find more and more, but they're the ones that I'm highly recommending. So I guess I just wanted to point to a couple of things that when we hear about art-based research, it's not just one thing. There are many ways to do it. And there are perspectives like art historical perspectives, where art historians will research particular artworks, artists. They'll look at the context, they'll look at correspondence like letters and diaries and journals. They might have interviews with people who knew the artist. They might go to secondary sources like newspapers. Okay, so that's art historical research. And I've recently written an article, which I'll show you as well by sharing in a second. I have it here ready to show you on another tab. Yeah, yes. So this is on my own website. Okay, Carla Van Laar. If you go to About Me, you'll find a thing called Publications and Resources, a tab. And if you scroll down in there, you can see some things that I've written myself. And this one here is a recent article I wrote 2019. It's called Seeing Her Stories, Finding a Place in the Landscape of Art Therapy Literature. This one it contains a lot of literature review. It's a discussion piece, but if you have a look through it, I sort of build the argument for art therapy as a profession to take on the idea of looking to art history and art historical methods in our own research, but to take that another step further and actually move towards art historical practices, okay? Because art therapy actually is a profession comprised mostly of female practitioners, but our gendered voices have been lost from a lot of the research. And so in this article, I just basically say this: within the landscape of therapeutic arts and the context in which we practice, our own distinctive yet connected voices and art-based approaches are potent ways in which we can actively contribute to making spaces for subjugated and unseen stories to become visible. Some of these subjugated stories are our own ways of knowing and knowledge production, and lead us closer to re-authoring an art historical foundation for education, practice and research in art therapy. So I'm really challenging us to find our own ways and our own voices that are authentic to who we are and how we practice, and the arts-based methods that we know and love and work with and through. So that's sort of where I wanted to get to before I give you a quick look at my own chapters in my my doctoral research project, thesis, project, whatever. And so I'll just share my screen with you again, and I'm going to show you these chapters in my book, which is here. There it is. So if you want to see it, you can go on my website and click on Seeing Her Stories, and you'll find my doctoral research in there. So I chose to use I called it an art-based inquiry, and it was into seeing her stories. What can happen when a woman's stories are seen, okay? That was my research topic. So I wrote this chapter about my methodology. Okay, so the methodology is sort of the theoretical foundation for then what you go on and do. So I called it art-based inquiry, and I came up with these ways of describing it: practice-led, interconnected, and organic. So pretty much here I talk about how I always wanted to centralize art. I wanted to do my research about how art works. I wanted to use art making as a way of exploring it, and I wanted to use art also in the presentation of my findings, which is why I created a visual illustrated book. Okay, so this was really about my values, okay, and I think of that as making the research congruent, right? So that the way that we conduct our research is congruent with the things we want to know and the way that we want to work. So it's very values driven in that way. So I made art all the way through, and I talk about how in a practice-led approach to research that the structure is actually organic. Oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. This is what I'm talking about, organic. So what that means, it's really related to the idea of emergence, which is something that you'll find in Estelle Barrett's work about practice-led research and art-based inquiry. So the idea being that at the very start, we might have an idea of where we're coming from, and we might plant a seed, or we might drop a pebble in a pond, and then the research itself will grow, or the ripples will expand. Okay, so we don't necessarily know exactly where we're going. We know what we're interested in and we know how we're going to start, but the structure is emergent in that it grows, and in that way it's organic. It's not that it's chaotic, it has a structure, but it just has an organic structure, which makes it really interesting and beautiful. The other thing that I highlighted was that in art-based research, interconnectedness is a core value and theme. So we'll acknowledge that there's really no objectivity between the researcher and the researched, that the researcher and the participants will have real relationships that will influence and impact upon one another, and that the research happens in a particular context, that the research itself might shift and change over time, and that rather than trying to reduce the subjectivity and increase the objectivity in our research, we embrace and acknowledge the interconnectedness of everything that's happening in the research. So art-based research is always situated in context, in time and place, and in relationships between participants and the art as well, and the world. Okay.
Sorry, Carla.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you want us to ask questions as you're going, or if you'd like us to save them for the end.
I'll keep going, so write them down, because I just want to show you a few more things, and then I think we'll just have a discussion. Does that sound all right? Yeah. So here, this is my chapter 4, which is about my methods. Okay, so I'll just quickly show you some of the methods that I used, so that I hope this will be inspiring, because it sort of shows you the things that you really can do when you're conducting art-based research. So can I zoom in on this while I'm sharing? Oh, I can't. Maybe if I move this little box around. Oh yeah, I can now. Yeah. There it is. Right. Here we go. So, I had to do some of the normal things that you do in research. So plan and make an application for ethics approval. Then I established an ongoing practice of journaling about my research process. And, Mish, this is freely available on the internet, so you don't need to take a photo. I began engagement with relevant literature. So as a bookworm, I just read widely, exploratorily. I prepared artworks. I had interactive exhibitions where I'd invite people to come and view my artworks, because I was interested in what can happen when a woman's stories are seen. So I made my own artworks and used myself as a case example, and invited participants to see them and to do a longitudinal study about the ripple effects that this seeing had in their own lives. So I kept on painting to produce further collections of artworks, which I kept on exhibiting. I recruited my research participants from the people who viewed and responded. I had interviews with them about their seeing. I painted portraits of them. I had more conversations with them. I wrote narratives of the interviews and the conversations. Oh, goodness, I did so many things. Look at this. I've gone on to a different page. Oh, I'll zoom back out so I can see where I am. Oh, yeah. Oh, I thought there was something else on here. Right. Wrote narratives of the interviews and conversations. Okay, so, there it is. There's the rest of it there. I had a group dinner party as a focus group, which I've filmed and transcribed as part of gathering source material. Prepared an autoethnographic account, integrating all of the research journal, the narratives, the focus group transcript. That document was 160,000 words long when I first made it. Then I conducted a thematic analysis of the autoethnographic account using keywords and clustering, I documented all of my artworks photographically. I did an iterative analysis of themes, the transcripts and the artworks to refine the themes and link them with relevant stories and images in the research. I mapped keywords, and then I did a focused literature review. Once I'd found themes, I focused my research into the literature and researched further into those themes. So really my literature review came after I'd generated my findings, okay, not before. All right. Well, I read literature before, but that really focused it. And then I kept painting and exhibiting, and I'll put here, I did writing as inquiry and the thesis preparation. So, of course, in the process of writing, then I came to know and understand things in a more refined and depthful way. So the writing itself was also part of the inquiry. So I'll just flick you through some of the pages here because they sort of visually show some of the methods. There's lots of artworks, as you can see. Yeah. And that's what I talk about when I'm sort of clustering keywords and doing a thematic analysis. There I am painting in situ from life, and we work our way through. I think that's pretty much the end of the chapter. Yeah, then we get to the findings section, which is where I present all of the findings, but that's actually where I'll stop today. And that's where I thought I'd open it up for a conversation, because I've probably given you a lot of food for thought, and I'm really happy just to have a chat from now on, if you like.
So one of my curiosities, I don't know, I can't see everybody else's screen, so is anyone else going to jump in?
Should I? Good? Can I put you on gallery view? Now we're all in. Yeah.
So I feel very organically drawn to using imagery, but I'm not sure of like the research reasonings behind doing that. So I'm just wondering for you, what was the value in using images and having a multimodal approach to your research and presenting your research?
Well, as I said, I'm an artist and an art therapist, as well as an art-based researcher. So for me, it was very important the whole way through to have art as part of the process and part of the way of researching. But what I found was that the themes that emerged actually were preempted by the themes in my artwork. So it was almost as though I found the themes visually before I was able to articulate them in words. So for example, when I was conducting the literature review, okay, to look at the landscape of ideas in art therapy, by the time I was well into that process, I realised that all during that time I'd been drawn to painting landscapes, so large vistas. So I was getting a big picture view. Right? So the art making process sort of reflected but preempted the process that I was at in the research journey. Not only that, it also visually reflected the findings themselves. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so when we write our justification for choosing images, we could say that that's like an anticipated effect or value of using images, that it could preempt our research findings.
And it depends how you say you want to use images. So I'm not sure if I mentioned, there's different types of art-based research. There's art-informed research, which is research that's not even necessarily about art, but that the structure of it is informed by creative process. So it might have a very emergent structure. Then there's art in research, where you'll kind of conduct a research study and then you might include some artwork because it might convey or communicate or illustrate things in a visual way that you're saying in your words. So, you know, you might use images like that. But if you're using art making as part of your process of inquiry, then what you might want to say is that I'm going to engage in an art making process alongside my research process, to assist in sort of the processing and the emergence of unexpected and new knowings. Because that's sort of what using the artwork in the process can help to do. It can help you to discover things that you have not yet imagined. And it's really different in that way from, you know, purely, well, cognitive and symbolic research. It's practice-led. Yeah. Who else?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey, Len.
Hi. I'm just wondering, like, you know, I wasn't thinking of the art-based methods, but how do you make it, you know, there's this whole thing about whether it can be counted in or not. So it would be, if we were to want to incorporate, would we best be looking at some direction from, as you said, like I knew that Sean McNiff does have a lot of info. So maybe the methods, I'm just wondering, because I'm just wondering, you know, when it comes to empirical and quantitative, they seem to have more of a problem.
Well, who are they for a start? Who are you talking about?
The rule makers. I guess I'm just thinking, you know, yeah, what, you know, to make sure what counts. Like if I say, well, I wanted to use this image as, I mean, will it count? Will it be fine in?
It won't count, okay, because that's a quantitative term.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
you
right.
really, yeah. If you're, what you need to do is find an institution and a supervisor who value the methods, okay, that you want to use. Yeah? So if you keep banging on doors where people say, oh no, that doesn't count, that's not proper research, then you're always going to feel shut down and misunderstood and disempowered. Yeah. So you just go and seek out your people. Yeah, the people who understand you, who value your way of working, and there's plenty of them out there. Okay, that's where you'll find yourself a home, where you're going to be enabled to do creative research.
Okay, thanks. And can I ask as well, what was the length of time for the research that you carried out that you just shown us? Like, what was the period of time that took you?
10 years.
10. Okay.
Yeah, but my master's research only took me 1 year.
Okay. And those were all your paintings, obviously, in there?
Yeah.
The artworks, they were all yours, not collected from?
Yeah, no, they're mine.
They were amazing. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
That's okay. Yeah. There's some beautiful things that Sean McNiff says. Look, other people say great things too, but I do come back to him because he just puts things so well. So he talks about the value of art-based research is that we can create research that convinces and inspires. Okay, so if you are the recipient, if you're on the receiving end of research and you find it convincing and inspiring, then the research is doing its job. And people who are experts in qualitative research talk about the value and the rigor of the research being in how much it rings true. Okay, so even in autoethnography, you'll hear people like Carolyn Ellis talking about, does the story resonate with you? Does it make you feel things? Does it ring true with your own lived experience? Okay, yeah. So you think of those things as indicators of value in art-based and qualitative research. Yeah, does it inspire and convince, and does it ring true? Does it make you feel things? Because they're actually the things that will motivate us to action. And they're the things that make research valuable if it has effects in the world. Anyone else?
I had a question brewing, but I wasn't just unsure how to actually express it, so I'll try it anyway.
Okay.
I was just curious about within art therapy research, the role of narrative and how that can be used, language can be used to convey and express those things that make a piece of research compelling and moving and those sort of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. It definitely makes sense. So narrative research is a whole thing in and of itself, as is narrative therapy, and they're not the same thing, but they're related because they're both interested in narrative and stories. And within narrative research, autoethnography is one form, but it's not the only form. Okay, so the ways that written work can be used, well, it can be used as creative products. So some of the creative products that you might produce might be, stories, so autobiographical or fictional stories, or there might be poetic writings and things like that. So whenever you're using writing as an art form itself, you can include it as an art form. So in my research, I've got journal extracts, that I just take out and put straight in the way that they were written, 8 years ago or something. And I've also got little short sort of poetic descriptions that I've constructed as a sort of another way of illustrating the core themes. So I've got both journal and poetic descriptions in my doctorate, but you'll look, if you're really interested, have a look at Carolyn Ellis' book. It's called The Ethnographic Eye. And it's actually quite a brilliant book because it's an autoethnographic fiction, which is also a textbook about how to write autoethnography. It's like meta autoethnography.
I love that. Yeah, that's cool.
Really cool.
What was the name? Sorry, Carla?
The Ethnographic Eye.
By who? Sorry?
Carolyn Ellis. And I is like me, myself, and I, not the eyeball. Yeah. But Cody, I think also, I know people who've done their PhD through creative writing or even sometimes cultural studies where you can create a creative piece of work like a novel, either a fiction or a non-fiction book of some sort, and that can be your creative project. Yeah, so sometimes you can get a degree by creative project and you have your written book as your main thing, but often you'll have to create a thesis, so a sort of academically structured thesis around your creative work as well. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps heaps. Thanks, Carla. I was just reflecting on my own experience of, reading research and being really drawn to those candid, as you said, like journal entries and those poems and those sort of things, and how that sort of, helps tell a story or helps illustrate a point or however it's used. Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Yeah. So the inclusion of art in research actually often helps us to understand something in a way that we might not understand it otherwise. So in social sciences research, for example, what we might want to understand is what it's like to be the person who's experiencing a particular thing. So, understanding the lived experience of people receiving treatment for cancer, for example. So you might be wanting to understand the lived experience. Okay, and so in that kind of research project, the art making can give us sort of maybe greater access into ways of understanding the lived experience. because the art will convey things in a way that's sometimes not possible in words because it's layered and complex, and it also evokes our emotions and touches us in a way that, you know, only the arts can. Any other questions or comments or just general discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this, Carla. It's been really, really great for me just to sort of, I think what I was struggling with was just kind of feeling valid in the process of using arts and an arts-based sort of direction. So for me, it's really useful to sort of go, okay, you could do it this way, you could do it that way, and just kind of, yeah, the whole sort of what counts, oh, can you hear me? The whole what counts sort of thing is something I've been feeling just without a sort of touchstone as to, yeah, there are other ways you can do it. And so it's been really encouraging for me. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Look, when I first started my doctorate, I was at a university where I felt misunderstood and I knew what I wanted to do. And I spent the whole first year of my research trying to write up a proposal that was acceptable to the institution. And at the end of the year, I felt disabled. Okay, and by that I mean I felt disempowered and unable to continue. Yeah, so I withdrew, and then I found another place to do my research where I was enabled. Yeah, so that's why I would stress, you know, don't bother trying to bang your head up against the wall of an institution where you're made to feel like your ideas don't count, because there are places where your ideas do count. You just need to find the right supervisor in the right place. And that goes for workplaces as well. There's workplaces where your ways of knowing and your ideas for working with people and how to research, there's workplaces where your ideas will be valued as well. Yeah.
There are a couple of questions in the chat too, Carla.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Carla,
Yes.
may I just ask you, with the research proposal that I'm putting together for our course at the moment, at the heart of it is symbol, and it's an observation of how symbol can be used as a container for people in specific circumstances. And my sort of thought is to partner with arts therapists. So in other words, to have this proposal and go to them for implementation so they do the observing and the implementation of the work with their clients who fit in this a specific category. Is that a thing? Is that a thing that you can actually partner with other therapists as a kind of access?
Yeah, sure. I was a participant in somebody else's master's research. So she was researching about using art therapy with clients who had problematic behaviours.
Yep.
Yeah, and so she, as a research participant, I was working with clients. She was interested in my work, and she came and did some sessions with me where we used art-based processes to understand my work with the client.
Exactly. That's what I want to do. Oh, great. Thank you. So it's a thing. It's not like I'm just coming up with something. Great.
Yeah, some good stuff that came out of it too.
Oh, sorry, Susie. I've started doing the young people's elective. And there was an excellent reading.
Oh, there, Lauren.
That was part of our reading, an art therapy encounter.
Yes.
An investigation of experience of art therapy in high school in Australia.
Yes.
She used a group of art therapists to help find her. Yeah, this was I do believe for a doctorate, PhD or something like that. She used a group of other art therapists.
Oh, great, because I've got all the readings from that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I've been finding that really inspiring, and yeah.
Thanks, Lauren.
So, yeah.
So I would really recommend that you look at art therapy journals. So there's the International Journal of Art Therapy. There's ANZJAT. That's our Australian one, Australian New Zealand Journal of Art Therapy, yeah. And there's the Journal of the American Association of Art Therapists. There's, I think, International Creative Arts Therapy. Anyway, there's those first three that I mentioned. Just have a look at art therapy journals, because you'll find research done by art therapists in there, and they will describe their research design. I just wanted to share with you, I've got a friend who's an art therapy lecturer in the Netherlands, and that's the only other country that I know of where there's a Bachelor of Art Therapy. And I was asking her about the difference between the bachelor and the master's students, and she was saying that the bachelor is really focused on preparing people for practice, whereas when they do master's level, they're more expected to be able to actually conduct research. So I would suggest that that's probably reasonable for you to think about yourselves in that way as well, that the bachelor is a practitioner level. So if you're learning how to look to the literature and find out what's the evidence base or some ideas around good practice for maybe the sorts of people who you want to work with or the kinds of things that you want to do, that's really helpful if you've learned how to do a good literature review. And if you've also learned how to start imagining how you might conduct research, that's really good preparation for a master's as well.
That's what this unit covers. The two end products that we're required to provide are a literature review and a research proposal. So
yeah, so for bachelor level, that sounds really appropriate. But what's also really important is that you just understand that there's a bigger view of what research in art therapy can be. That's what I'm really hoping that you'll take home. So those key points again. And yes, I can share that literature review document with anyone who wants it. You'll just have to email me. So the key take-home points again were methods used in scientific research have been shown to be lacking when it comes to understanding how art works. Yeah. And we do research to learn something we don't already know or find evidence for something we think we know. There are many ways to include art in, about, for, and through art-based practice, and you can design research that reflects what you want to know about and how you work, and that is congruent with your values. So think of your research as your creative product. You don't need to be scared that it's not good enough for somebody else. Okay, once you decide how to do it, if you get your ethical clearance, then it's okay. You can go ahead and do the research in the way that you want to. That's my take-home message. So I'm going to stop the video very shortly. I'm still recording. So thank you very much. I will stay here for a minute or two after I finish. But yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks for sharing and listening and participating.
Thank you. Thanks, Carla. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla. Much
Been
appreciated.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.